Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Mark.
Welcome to BrandDIY. I'm talking to you.
You talking to me?
Yeah, I'm talking to you. Wake up, for God's sake. We were just talking about cold water swimming. It's time
Hey,
to do some
Mark.
cold water swimming.
Yeah, happy to be here, Mark. I thought you were talking to your wonderful audience there
No, I'm
for a
not
bit.
talking. I don't give a shit about my audience. Whatever. None of them show up for these things anyway. Well, they do actually. Sorry, audience. No, they do show up for these things.
Of
But
course
I
they
was
do.
talking to you.
Yeah, hey, good to see you, Mark.
It's good to see you. Now, little background. If we play a little bit fast and loose, people have to know that we come by it honestly. I got to know you in grade 3.
Indeed, yeah.
We played in a
That's
band,
playing a band together.
like a really good band.
Um, yeah,
People might
yep.
have heard of it.
I
They were
dug
called
you out of a
Journey.
ditch once,
You were at
saved
my,
you.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
You were at my wedding, best man.
yeah, wow. Think of
I
that.
know.
The best, man.
Totally the best
The
man.
best. Yeah.
So truly, I mean, I could have brought you on as an expert and that would have been a huge, huge thing because you've got a ton of knowledge, but you could have also just been filler because I couldn't find anybody else, right?
Well, we're still not sure
We're
about
still
that
not
one.
sure.
Yeah.
All right, enough BS because Jerry is a huge talent and he has done huge things. This is Jerry Gratton, folks. And he was the former head of people and culture. Wait a minute, people and culture or teams and culture?
People and culture.
People and culture at O2E Brands. If you're not familiar with O2E Brands, they started out as Got Junk, one of the coolest organizations, one of the most revolutionary organizations. They made junk collection into something like a Las Vegas bar or restaurant where they're like the best service in the whole wide world. And people are like, that's impossible. And you guys did it. And you were there right in the very early days, helping basically create this culture of these incredibly cool people who you go, I can't believe these people are junk removers. And you did that.
Well, yeah, we did some pretty cool things in the early days. We made, when you're in the business of junk collecting, there's nothing really sexy about that world.
Mhm.
So attracting people became the most important thing, and it was early days that we realized that culture wasn't sort of part of the strategy or something that you did on the side of your desk to, make yourself feel good about building a good company. It actually was the strategy. Culture, you've heard the expression "culture eats strategy" for
No, never heard
breakfast,
that.
Drucker.
No.
Yeah. So it actually, it wasn't just eating it for breakfast. It actually, it was the strategy. It's the cornerstone of it.
But back when you started this, I mean, this was back before electricity. Their culture wasn't a thing back then. I mean,
Well,
it really came up while you were at work and got junk. Culture suddenly became everything. Everybody talks about culture, but it wasn't in the early days.
yeah, no, I mean, so yeah, really good point. It wasn't talked about. It wasn't on the CEO's agenda. But it was there. I mean,
Mhm.
all of our, you get three people together and there's culture and and maybe it'd be a good time to just say that my really simple definition for workplace culture or organizational culture is just how we do things here. So, really simply, the culture was there. What I think that Got Junk did, excuse me for my ex-colleagues at 1-800-GOT-JUNK. They not supposed to abbreviate that. But what we did there was we showed that by focusing on culture, by making culture a big part of the strategy, that it actually lends itself to, it's how you fuel growth.
Mhm.
It's how you create high performance among people that are performing because they want to, not because you're kind of whipping them into shape. And it really
That's
is
a
the
pretty
only way to
radical
sustain it.
departure. I mean, back in the day, that was a pretty radical thing because it was sort of like the dad looking over the little kids. You had to watch them punch
Mhm.
the clock and they check in.
Sure.
And I
Yeah.
mean, changing it around to making it into a place where people want to work, that was pretty big. That was a pretty big deal.
Uh, yeah, it was, Mark. And probably many people have seen or read or heard Brian Scudamore, and he really he is 1-800-GOT-JUNK, and he is the heart of O2E. And so, being the culture guy, the people and culture guy that's working alongside a CEO that already believes that that is the most important thing in the organization, that was pretty cool. and kind of landing at 1-800-GOT-JUNK after grinding my teeth in the tech world through the .com for many, many years. Like what an amazing experience, and what a relief to kind of find myself with this CEO that really was cutting a new path and raising sort of culture to the forefront.
Now, culture isn't parties.
Yeah, it
Tell me
was.
about the camel. Tell me about the camel in Vegas.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So.
Or don't tell me about the camel in Vegas.
No, that's a good one. That's a good one. No, and you're good at sort of, you know, lobbing something in there to.
I told you it'd be easy, but I'm saving a few.
Well, culture isn't parties, and you know, one of the as culture's kind of raised its profile, and it's now, you know, it's front of CEOs and entrepreneurs' minds. You know, it used to be people pay lip service to it by saying, oh yeah, we're working on our culture. We put a foosball table and a ping pong table, and we get lunch on Fridays brought in. And you're like, okay, that's great. But culture is actually all the shit that, all the stuff that happens in between. And so when I say culture's not parties, parties can be part of culture, but you know, if you want to build a high performing culture, it's not sustainable just with parties. However, if you are going to do a party and you are going to do some things, do it right, and do it like it, just have people's jaws drop. And the story that Stoiber's reminding me of is so 1-800-GOT-JUNK is a franchise organization. So every year we'd bring in all of our franchisees from around the world, bring them here to Vancouver. Actually, that year was not Vegas, it was Vancouver. And Brian wanted to kind of really shake people up with when he did his annual CEO speech. And so we figured out a way to get a camel into the Westin Bayshore Hotel. And it took a little convincing, but he rode in dressed like Lawrence of Arabia on the back of a camel, and he came right through the conference room. And there's like, imagine like 400 or 500 franchise partners and their people sitting around, and this camel walks in with the Arabian music playing. And then he proceeds to, there's a tie-in here, Mark. He gets off the camel on stage and he starts talking about the humps of business, right?
Oh.
Yeah, the ups and downs, the humps.
Oh.
Yeah, so, you know, it was a good party. The
Oh
camel didn't stay for the whole party. The camel had to get back in the truck and go home.
It was double booked. Yeah,
he was
booked for a gig later.
Yeah, of all places. Yeah.
I just love the idea. I love the idea of what could go wrong, right?
Oh yeah, we thought of probably the thing that everyone's thinking about. What happens if the camel decides to?
Yeah.
You know what?
Yeah. I just thought the camel like breaking off the leash and going for a run through the lobby, and I'm like, oh man, that would be so funny afterwards. It'd be funny afterwards.
Apparently, like food services and camels don't mix very well, so we did have to get the camel in and out of that conference room pretty quickly.
See, you're a Renaissance man.
Point is, we were celebrating that was extravagant. We were celebrating the rocket ship growth of 1-800-GOT-JUNK, and we wanted to do it in a really sort of celebratory and extravagant way. And that, you know, of course, you think of a camel right away when you think
that. Well, that's the second thing to my mind. But now that one thing, when I came and visited you at your new offices, there's such cool offices. And I remember that's when you showed me that one corkboard where everybody puts up their ideas, stuff to do. Mm-hmm. And that's not uncommon. Like people have ideas on how to improve things. But every week, Scudamore used to go by and gather everybody around and pull a couple of ideas off the wall. And you guys would execute on stuff like that, talking about how we do stuff, you know, that you actually feel you got a snowball's chance of the boss saying, yeah, let's try this, let's try that. He had a whole bunch of things. So you guys together put together a whole bunch of stuff that made everybody feel like they really had a say.
Well, yeah, and I think that's part, you know, that is how we do things here. If that's culture and how we wanted to do things at 1-800-GOT-JUNK and O2E Brands was to have, you know, people talk about alignment, you know, from CEO down to front line. So we really wanted to respect the front line and for 1-800-GOT-JUNK and the other home services businesses that they run, the front line is both like the guys on the trucks, guys and gals on the trucks, but also they're call center driven businesses. So we had a front line that's on the phone with customers day in, day out. And so respecting the front line is about, not saying like there's a suggestion box over in the corner, and it's actually a paper shredder, but actually, actually asking and wanting input from everyone in the organization. So what you're talking about turned into, at one time it was a cork board. It got a little more sophisticated as years went on, but we called it our Can You Imagine wall. And literally, people it's like a suggestion box on steroids, and people would submit ideas, and if some of the ideas would get up on the Can You Imagine wall, and then when they got achieved, they'd get a big check mark. And that was like massive source of pride to have your idea up on the Can You Imagine wall, and big check mark next to it. Probably the biggest. Do I have time for a quick story about that?
Yeah, no,
probably
that's great.
Probably the sort of most famous one from that was we had a
camel.
And a camel. Yeah, no, the camel actually never was a Can You Imagine. It just happened. Basically it spiraled out of control with Scudamore and I talking about it. But Andrea Baxter was a
ferret. It started out as a ferret, and then it just kept going.
Exactly. I'll walk in with a ferret and he'll jump up on my shoulder. It'll be so cool. Starbucks though, there's a brand.
Yeah.
So if you remember back sort of pre-recession, Starbucks had this campaign where really, really important business leaders and leaders of the world would get quotes on the side of Starbucks cups. And so a PR manager back in the day at 1-800-GOT-JUNK came up with the crazy Can You Imagine idea, the big, hairy, audacious goal of like, what if we could get 1-800-GOT-JUNK or Brian on a Starbucks cup? And everyone, like most people went, that's crazy. But Andrea was just crazy enough to think that we could actually do it. And, PR in those days was pitching and phoning and who do you know? And next thing you know, she knows someone who gets her talking to the right people. And, I don't know that I'll make up the time frame because I forget now, but within months, there it was, Scudamore on the side of something like 10 million Starbucks cups across North America, advertising essentially 1-800-GOT-JUNK and celebrating Andrea's big Can You Imagine idea. And no one thought that that could be achieved. It's nuts. Yeah, but there it was.
That is nuts. That's so cool. Now you left O2E or GOT-JUNK, but you spent a long time there. How long were you there? Like 10, 15 years?
Yeah, sort of on again, off again for almost 15 years, 14 years, I think. Yeah, so pre-recession, it was all 1-800-GOT-JUNK. We grew that thing from about 30 franchises to closer to 350 franchises around the world, North America, Australia, and the UK. And then I went away for a while, worked with some other brands, did some fun things. But when Brian wanted to take it multi-brand, so grow beyond 1-800-GOT-JUNK, I went back in 2012, and that's when we saw. I think that's when O2E, really got put on the map as a most admired culture, won that award in Canada twice. Great places to work, consistently on the great places to work. So yeah, I mean, we did some good work in those years after 2012, after the recession.
And I mean, you and Scudamore got my kid a job too, my 17-year-old kid. So he was driving around the junk truck and he loved it. And you also got my nephew a job.
That's right. Yeah. And that's the thing, is that because it's kind of cool. It's cool to be a junk truck team member.
But he was going to do it this summer, except for the plague, right?
Doesn't sound like a cool job.
Yeah. And what's cool too is the local franchise guy. You go in because you kind of know what it's like at head office, but I've never been inside. And so you go to the local franchise when I'm dropping my boy off at like 6 in the morning or 7 in the morning. And you walk around, you talk to guys, and you're going, "Oh my God, it went
kind of feels like head office
way through." It's actually true.
Yeah,
they're actually doing it.
So intentional, and I think it's one of the reasons. Like, if you have visited the O2E Brands offices, it's a bit over the top. Like, you might have attended one of the huddles, the daily stand-up meeting, 5 to 7 minutes. Well, now because of the plague, it's all on Zoom, but in the old days, everyone's standing in this room celebrating any sort of victories and successes from the day before and going through the numbers, super transparent. That, that's a bit over the top, and like the walls totally telling the story of the brand and what we believe in and all that. We kind of felt like it's like, dropping a rock in a pond, and the ripple, the waves to get out all the way to Toledo, Ohio, and Brisbane, Australia. Those first ripples of the wave, that head office kind of has to be really huge in order to. And so we're over the top, but then we'd give the franchisees, franchise partners, we call them, we'd give them the templates, the recipe for how do you do that at a smaller scale in your home office, wherever you are. And
That's
so
so
you'll
cool.
see, people with the core values of the company up on the wall. They'll use some of the same decals and decals in the US. They'll use those up on the walls to sort of really, we believe, the walls of your office should speak to your employees, and they should be telling them,
Well, I remember they did
what to believe in.
It was more than just sort of like window dressing though in this office. It was one of those things where they actually wrote down what each employee, their goals were, what they wanted to achieve, and how they could help get them there. And you're like, we're talking about 18-year-old kids here, and you're like, that's super cool, because I don't remember that, working in my dad's TV store.
I didn't grow up with that kind of stuff either. Yeah. The 101 life goals was the program
that's what
that
it
you're
was.
speaking about. And that was, that's also, that was one that was definitely a Scudamore conceived idea that I had to figure out how to scale and, with my team. But the idea was, hey, we're going to be spending a ton of time together. We work together. You spend more time with the people you work with than your family. If sometimes. So, if we're going to spend all this time together, we're a super goal-oriented company, but why don't we share some of our personal goals in life, as well as all the stuff that we're trying to achieve as an organization, and maybe we can help each other knock some of these goals off our list. So the idea behind 101 life goals became everyone who wanted to participate, and we strongly encouraged everyone to. Generates this 101 life goals. Brian, we would put $101,000 into a budget to sponsor 101 life goals, and we would, as goals kind of bubbled up to the top, we'd help people achieve them. So, for example, someone says one of my goals is to learn how to swim because I have this fear of deep water, and so we'd go, okay, well, tell you what, we'll sponsor you for your first 3 lessons. Or you pay for the first 3, we'll pay for the next 3.
If you survive, we'll pay for the next 3.
Skin in the game. And so things like that. So it could be something really crazy, or it could be just something really simple. Learning how to drive stick. We did stuff like, hey, okay, we're going to put a group of people together and we're going to go take them out in a truck and teach them how to drive standard.
I love that, because for an 18-year-old kid who's never been exposed to anything, it's really cool.
Yeah, we've been told that, times I keep in touch with lots of employees that have gone through, in the call center, you get a lot of attrition, but people that say, you kind of ruined it for me. Every company that I've worked for since then just doesn't quite make it. They try to do a lot of and they do some great things, but man, O2E Brands ruined it for me for the rest of my
They're really good. Now, you're with Trailblaze now. You're one of the founders of Trailblaze Partners, which is a culture company. You've got 3 partners there. And so you're kind of, you're consulting, but you're also, you're building a methodology. You're doing a whole bunch of cool stuff. But you're working with companies both large and small, which brings us to the point. The people watching this, most of us are entrepreneurs and founders. And so we're talking about a lot of small companies, a lot of small tech companies, not tech companies. They look at O2E, they look at Got Junk, they go, holy crap. But there must be something that you have, at Trailblaze Partners, where you go, okay, if you're just starting out, here's the stuff to start paying attention to so you can build it right from the start. Give us, like, if I was watching this, I'm a founder, what could you tell me to do?
You are a founder.
Oh,
Mark?
no, I'm
Yeah,
just a disappointed consultant.
exactly. Yeah, join the club. No, and so the thing that you said that I really love is that you start building culture from day one, and actually startup culture is usually easier. It's easier to generate the energy of startup culture usually, and those first people that you bring on, they probably share in the vision. They kind of they're as crazy about the idea as the founder is, and they're in it. And so, but you ride that for only so long. And so we really encourage, even at startup, to start defining what that culture is, because the thing about culture is, we were saying earlier, is that it's there whether you actually are working on it or not, or it is developing, and there is a culture. So as a founder, the culture is probably going to be an extension of you in the early days, but don't make it a mystery for people to understand what that is. How, what's important to us? What do we believe in? What, how do we do things here? How, everything from like, are deadlines important to us, or are we kind of easy going on that? How do we celebrate wins? How do we recognize each other? How do we, what does high performance mean? What is all of those things? So what we do at Trailblaze when we're working with, startups and smaller businesses, is we say, have you done this? Do you have core values? Do you have a vision? Have you stated a purpose of the organization? And it doesn't have to be, really elaborate, but you just start thinking about that, and you work with your sort of core group to kind of define what that is. And those are super exciting times, early days of building a culture, when you can start with that, and then the stories that you'll tell as you grow and you scale. And when it really gets hard is when you start scaling. But if you've created that foundation, that scaling culture gets way easier.
It's like, I think if you start right from the start, then you start to see the payoff right from the start, and that people go, I know how I'm going to do this thing because it's the way we do things around here. So you don't have people wandering off into the woods doing stuff their own way, or working against you. I imagine hiring gets easier because people go, oh, I know what you guys are all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we I didn't invent this, but I'll take credit for it. But the expression that you'll hear us say a lot is, we really believe that the customer experience will never exceed the employee experience. So that it's that service profit chain that has been talked about, since the 80s. But the idea that you want happy customers, then you need happy employees to deliver great services to those happy customers. To have happy employees, what do you need? You need a great employee experience. And the employee experience is just how they experience working at your company day to day. To have a great employee experience, you need a well-articulated, defined company culture that promotes the kind of behavior that you want, the high performance, the fun, the whatever it is that's important to you. And there's no cookie cutter for culture. You don't go, oh, you did these great things at O2E Brands. Can you just teach us how to do that here? And I'll say, well, it depends. You've got a group of
how much money do you have?
Software technicians, and how much money do you have? No, but we're a group of actuaries. I don't think that the exact same formula that worked at 1-800-GOT-JUNK is gonna work for that organization. But focusing on culture is the only, I believe, sustainable way to continue to grow an organization and to really have sustained success.
We gotta get together. I'm writing this series of BrandDIY books where I'm just taking on topics. I just finished one on writing a book. Like, how do you write your own book that builds your brand?
Is it like the coffee table book of coffee tables?
A book on coffee tables, and I put it on coffee tables.
Exactly.
We should do a culture one. I'm just starting on one on building a trust brand right now. So they're going to be like little short little guidebooks. But I think, like, for startup guys, I think that would be a wicked book. Now, one of your guys has a book out.
Yeah, it's bridging. It's the leadership gap. And so what our belief is that what's preventing a lot of home services businesses, and we've got some pretty deep roots in home services, what's preventing them from growing and scaling is not marketing or it's not, you know, their operations processes. It's almost always a leadership gap. The founder hasn't figured out how to be a founder and a CEO of their company. They're stuck in sort of in the tools, in the weeds all the time, doing stuff. And so this book if it does anything, it gets them to actually see that, be aware of it, and start to see that there's a path to be the CEO of your company, not the best technician in your company, the best software developer, the best, you know, plumber, whatever that is.
That, you know, even if you just did consulting on an hourly basis with startup people, I think, by the way, folks, if you don't know, Jerry is a member of BrandDIY Group, so you can call him up just by typing in Jerry Gratton, Gratton, and he'll pop up. So I think, like, for people running their own companies or starting out, just tapping your brain a little bit. I mean, it doesn't have to cost a fortune. They don't have to buy a lot of your brain, but man, it would help set people on a straight and narrow so well, because I think a lot of people, I do it too. You know, you quit your job because you want to be the boss, and then you just end up being the best at whatever you were doing, and you screw up the boss job completely.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Let's write a book, Mark. It's good.
I'll do it.
You're talking culture now. Like, it's taken me 15, 20 years to get you to this stage. It's awesome.
I know.
It looks good on you, Mark.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's the highlights. All right. So I'm going to throw it out there for the folks listening to this, that Jerry is a member of our group. Culture, I believe, like, having walked through the halls of Got Junk and O2E, it's insane having dropped my kid off to work for a franchisee. The culture goes right through it. It goes deep, and it makes a huge difference. And you're doing it now for a ton of other companies, large and small. So yeah, I would throw it out there for folks. Take advantage of this massive talent that we have here, and Jerry.
Yeah. There's lots of people behind me. Thanks.
All right, man. Talk to you later.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Take care, everyone.
See ya.